Hello everybody, and welcome back to, finally, another fighting game retrospective reaction. I know that there have been a couple requests for certain things for me and Serby to check out, and wasn't too sure on some of them, to be honest. We kind of wanted to start up a new story, get into a new series, see some of the lore behind it. Might be a bit more interesting to get back into the flow of things. That being said, looking through the retrospective playlist over on Thorgi's channel, we saw this one, which has been a pretty big meme throughout some of the other retrospectives, so we had to check it out, right? And Serby's here.
Quite a few times.
The Rumble Fish. It just makes sense for Serby to have to at least know about this one. I know nothing about it, so
rumbling.
yeah, they are indeed. But yeah, I mean, it's a Thorgi video. It's probably gonna be a good time regardless. Which, speaking of, if you guys haven't already, please go and support Thorgi. A link to do so will be at the very top of the description, like always.
The world of fighting games is full of some of the most iconic series in the history of video games. Some of the most famous faces in all of pop culture got their start in these button bashers. This is a genre full of games that have sculpted not just what we play, but so many corners of our lives.
It is pretty interesting how iconic some of these characters are, and yet how niche fighting games are. I guess the characters themselves kind of just transcend the gameplay, or the games themselves.
I feel like part of that's true. I also think in the arcade era, fighting games were less niche as they are now, probably.
Oh, probably. Yeah. They were like the usual thing that you would see at an arcade. There would probably be like several of them around with many different games and stuff like that. So the experience growing up then would have just kind of cemented them in your mind.
But you know, fighting games aren't just about the stars. It's not all about those games so famous even your grandparents can list off the special moves. No, fighting games are an endless ocean of titles, and not all of them can blow up and become the next Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. But that doesn't mean they still aren't worth looking at. No, just off the beaten path, in that back corner of the arcade that you never went to, you would find some fighters that you may not be familiar with, but they were still full of unique characters, impossible bosses, stylish artwork, and crazy unique mechanics. These were games like Kaiser Knuckle, Fighting Vipers, Power Instinct, and so many more that I would be listing them off until the end of time. And today, we're going to spotlight such a title. A title that might not have been here for long, but in that time it developed an audience that is fiercely dedicated.
Yeah, I was still surprised at the fact that Thorgi could make a top 100 fighting games of all time list. I was like, there can't be enough for 100 of them? I should have seen it. Should have seen it coming. Because, of course, there are definitely like a ton of them out there that just never really picked up, unfortunately. That's just a sea of games out there, especially in the modern gaming scene too, where game development is pretty easy to get into, but really hard to find success in due to the saturation.
Yeah.
A title whose developers have roots going back to the dawn of fighting games, and a title that in some ways would go on to be an unsung hero for the entire genre. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of
the Rumble Fish.
The Rumble Fish.
Such an iconic title.
He looks like a little beta's fighting.
It's cemented in my mind similarly to KOF, Maximum Impact. Kind of same area in my mind. The Rumble Fish. Interesting music.
That's what I'm thinking.
The Rumble Fish. Will it actually have anything to do with the game? What the? Is this Samurai Champloo?
This song is so funny.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like Bond from Seven Deadly Sins, yeah. Kind of.
Yeah. These fighting game sprites look like they're puppet rigged as opposed to sprite animated, which is fascinating.
The Rumblefish. Yeah. I was gonna talk about that with you once we got through this intro section, but just like the way they're animated looks completely different from all the fighting games that I'm used to. Most 2D fighting games aren't animated this way.
Different. It's an entirely different animation type, yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Rumblefish retrospective, and you might be wondering why the heck we're doing this video today. Why are we spotlighting such an obscure series? Well, part of it is because, as I said, there are so many interesting series out there beyond just the big name titles, and I want to make sure that this show spotlights the wide variety of fighting games that have helped make this genre the diverse, interesting landscape that it is. Also, I made a joke about doing this in the King of Fighters retrospective, and I'm slowly coming to learn that every game I make a joke about, I will eventually end up doing a video on. See you soon, Waku Waku 7. But it's also because of you, the viewers. Specifically, the viewers who signed up for our brand new Patreon. Yeah, don't worry, folks, we're getting this plug out of the way early today. We just launched a Patreon, and one of the rewards over there is voting on upcoming videos. So I asked the fine patrons what they want our next retrospective video to be on.
The way that they have it puppet rigged, but because they have so much movement in the because the weakness to puppet rigging is you are basically stuck at one perspective. So every time they spin or turn their back or anything like that, they have to flop to a completely different rig.
Oh, damn. So
which means that it's a lot of work for what's usually a time-saving animation technique. Which means they did it stylistically and not for time-saving, which is another interesting choice.
Yeah. Well, we're certainly not strangers to developers choosing the most painstaking way to do a thing because they want it to look a certain way. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are just built different, apparently. I guess from another perspective too, there aren't like a lot of other things that you'd have to probably design and mold and build around to the point where this is kind of like the thing that you have to put most of your time into is the aesthetic of the game and making it stand out.
Yeah.
So
especially with the characters.
Yeah, I can kind of understand why that thought process and why there's so much time spent in these stylized looks, which you really don't have to make. But they probably do.
Century Mile was the game I did not expect to win, so this is going to be fun. But enough pre-rambling, let's dive into it. The story of the Rumblefish starts where so many fighting games began. In Tulsa, Oklahoma in the 1960s.
Oklahoma?
Where young Susan Eloise Hinton was surrounded by the infighting of two gangs in her local high school. But rather than join in with this rivalry brewing in her own backyard, she picked up a pen and put her thoughts to paper, writing the breakout best-selling novel, The Outsiders. The novel was such a success that it launched her entire career and even sent her to Hollywood, where the legendary director Francis Ford Coppola would take an interest in adapting not only The Outsiders, but the book's sequel, The Rumblefish. And that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that we're talking about today, but yes, there is a novel called The Rumblefish that was adapted into a film by Francis Ford Coppola in the 1980s, and if you Google Rumblefish, that's going to be 95% of the responses that you get, so I had to mention it. Yeah, easily the weirdest thing about this game, and the thing that most people joke about with it, is that it shares the same name with the Francis Ford Coppola movie from 20 years earlier. And the crazy thing is, that's not entirely coincidental. But I'll get back to that later. For now, let's actually talk about the game. The real story of the Rumblefish starts where so many fighting games began, with the death of another fighting game. If you saw our King of Fighters retrospective, then you probably remember this, but here's a little refresher. Thanks to the combination of the arcade scene dying in the late 90s, as well as several poor financial decisions back-to-back, fighting game giant SNK was bleeding money. And so, at the turn of the century, SNK was bought out by Aruzi, who decided that they were going to save the company.
No, it's been so long, but I still get PTSD flashbacks. No. That was still, like, probably one of the craziest series that we've covered, where the fighting game lore is not as crazy as the real world lore. Insane, dude.
Oh, wait, no. I mean that they would save money by stripping SNK for parts.
Yeah.
They began turning all their franchises into pachinko games and then started shutting down every other side of the company. They started firing employees, canceling projects, they even shut down SNK's American office, at a time when video game sales were skyrocketing in America. Yeah, SNK didn't die, it was murdered. But this isn't about SNK, we already covered that, check the card that's popping up right now. No, this is not a story about the Titanic, this is about one of the lifeboats that sailed off into the night. And this particular lifeboat was being rowed by Takashi Nishiyama. Now, if you've been with this channel for a while, then you've heard me talk about Takashi Nishiyama a lot. He created Fatal Fury and co-created King of Fighters and Street Fighter. Yep. In other words, he's kind of a big deal to the history of fighting games. Now, Nishiyama had been a director at SNK for several years, but he now found himself powerless to stop what Aruzi was doing. And realizing his choices were leave or sit around and watch something he loved die, he decided to split off, taking several other SNK devs with him, as well as multiple staff members from Capcom. And in 2000, they would form a brand new company, Dimps. Now, after being founded, Dimps hit the ground running, grabbing up every licensed title they could. Yeah, opening up your own game studio is expensive, so they relied on bigger companies like Sammy or Bandai Namco to hire them to make games out of the properties that they owned, such as Sonic Advance, Digimon Battle Spirits, One Piece Grand Battle, Inuyasha Feudal Fairy Tale, and biggest of all, Dragon Ball Z Budokai. Yeah, the first Dragon Ball fighting game to really blow people's minds and make them feel like they were actually controlling scenes from the show, that was Dimps.
Makes sense.
By the way, if you're like under 20, then I know what you're looking at on the screen right now. It doesn't look interesting at all, but trust me, to a Dragon Ball fan in 2002, this was mind-blowing. However, all of this was just Dimps paying their dues. They spent their first several years just being a work-for-hire developer trying to pay off their new studio. But they weren't content with this. They really wanted to make their own games, and they wanted to make something unique, something they had never tried before. And most importantly, they wanted it to be an arcade game. Most of the staff at Dimps came from the various arcade divisions at SNK and Capcom. In other words, they were people who had spent their entire lives training to make arcade games.
Okay, I looked it up because it was bothering me. It's not actually puppet rigged, it's weirder. They animated, like sprite animated all the limbs separately.
Okay, and then they just put them together?
Like patchwork them together like you would with a puppet rig, but there's just basically a whole lot of other moving parts. So they basically took what would normally be like one sprite sheet and made like, I don't know how many, like a lot of other sprite sheets and then Frankenstein them together.
Okay. Well, I have no idea what that would entail, but it sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, I can only imagine how much work it is. The article I'm looking at here to like understand how they did it. Apparently the reason is so they could do like battle damage type stuff apparently, which is cool.
So like I see battle damage to certain parts of a character. Interesting. I thought of that idea ever since way back when. I guess that was just like something they wanted to do, but the tech never really allowed for it. At least not in an easy way.
I still can't imagine it wouldn't be less work to do like a sprite sheet for a character and then a second sprite sheet for them with battle damage. Unless there's like ways to particularly damage individual parts of the character. Like, I don't know. It's a lot of work regardless of how they chose to do that.
Okay.
Maybe Thorgi will talk on it because that's pretty weird.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Maybe that was more common back in the day with sprite stuff. I don't know. I was never a sprite animator.
The early 2000s, the arcade scene wasn't doing all that great. I mean, they still existed, arcades were still around, and there was still an audience for those games. Yeah. It was just a lot smaller. But that smaller audience was having their minds blown by a brand new piece of hardware called the Atomus Wave. Yes, in the early 2000s, a new arcade board was being released called the Atomus Wave, and people were falling in love with the graphics and how smooth everything looked. And the developers at Dimps said, we have to make a game for that. But they didn't just decide to make one game for it, they decided to make 3, because they were energetic, determined, and they believed in these projects. I'm just kidding, that's not what happened at all. The actual reason why they greenlit 3 projects at once is because one of the companies that helped to fund Dimps was Sammy. And Sammy also made the Atomus Wave. So, like a mobster looking to get their loan back, Sammy showed up at Dimps' house in the middle of the night and said, tell you what, I'll make you a deal. You make some games that will get everyone playing the Atomus Wave, and we call it even. I'd say 3 titles should do the job. Take some time to think it over, but before you do, I'd just like to remind you, you're not allowed to say no. These 3 games were a beat-em-up called Demolish Fist, a soccer game named Premier 11 that is so rare this is literally the only footage I can find of it, and of course,
The Rumble Fish.
Rumblefish.
and while none of these really became huge successes, the Rumblefish was the one that found an audience and was the one that did something really unique. Dims's developer Hiroyuki Kawano said in an interview with Famitsu in 2022 that, quote, "If Dims is going to do it, it's going to be a fighting game."
I mean, the lead developers, the team,
Fair.
yeah, that's what they're good at.
And they had to, quote, "try something new." So, what exactly was this unique new approach to fighting games that Dims was talking about? Well, Rumblefish came out in 2004, a time when the vast majority of fighting games were moving away from sprites and heading towards 3D animation. Yeah, arcades weren't the only thing dying at this time. 2D fighters were in a drought right now. This style of fighter wouldn't come back until a few years later when Street Fighter IV would usher in the second fighting game boom. Right now, though, well, there were certainly 2D fighters still out there, but they were becoming more and more niche, and the audience for them were growing smaller by the day.
Well, it goes back to that whole era of look at the new shiny thing, 3D, and everybody
It's the
wanted to
new
make
era
a
of
game.
shiny thing,
Mhm.
and generally speaking, 3D costs less than 2D animation.
Yeah,
It's the same reason the film animation industry moved away from 2D.
just to cut on cost, and I guess help with development time too. That's completely fair, but I guess at the time they didn't know that this would actually be like an artistic style, a choice that people would still gravitate towards, considering that all the 3D games
Yeah.
were selling pretty well.
They weren't going to listen to what fads were saying, they were going to create something new that would revolutionize the industry. So they decided not only to stick with a 2D fighter, but they would approach it in a completely different way. They made this game using a program of their own invention called SMA, Smooth Model Animation, to blend 2D and 3D elements together. According to the game's engineer, Yoshiyuki Tanaka, there were programs out there for animation that allowed you to take 3D objects and map out movement for them using joint manipulation and articulation. But nobody had figured out how to use this in a fighting game. So they took their knowledge of this animation style and created their own software for it from the ground up, which would allow them to create a
Fascinating,
2D fighting game where rather than having to draw out sprites for every single frame of animation, they would instead create 3D body parts and they would then link them all together to move on a 2D plane. Now, a lot of people
Whoa.
consider this to be the very first
Okay,
example
that's even
of
weirder. That's so fascinating.
Right? So they're like, yeah, 3D is the new cool thing that could help us cut costs, but we're going to utilize that to make our own thing.
That's bizarre. Okay.
2.5D fighting game. Which it was not. That would be Slap Happy Rhythm Busters, and way more people need to know about Slap Happy Rhythm Busters. But
Okay.
even still, I don't know if I would call this a full-blown 2.5D fighter. 2.5D fighters are 3D models on a 2D plane, and even though it does qualify for that second part, there's some debate on the first. You see, I'm referring to these figures as 3D models because that's what the developers called them. But if you'll notice
They're
how
not,
certain
though.
features
They're
on these
just
characters
sprites,
don't
though.
swap sides when the characters turn around, it's clear these models are set to face one side and they just reverse them, just like how you would do with sprites. That's because saying these models are 3D is maybe a little bit of a stretch. Each part of the
So my
body
guess
is a different
is,
layer.
if I had to throw a guess how they're doing it, then is they're taking the animation curves, but they're mapping it onto their 2D animation to tell it when to change, which seems like a lot of work for little benefit. I don't know. This is so weird. I don't know why they would do this.
It's a stylistic choice. Maybe it gives off a certain feeling that is just different from other fighting games that they wanted. Who
I
knows?
guess, yeah. It
'Cause-
does look different.
We gotta remember that a lot of the Capcom and SNK developers are on this team, and we know for a fact that the SNK guys are crazy. Like they will do
Yeah, oh yeah.
anything new because they just want to do something new.
I mean, I fully feel that. I love messing around with new tech in this kind of way. So this is why I think this is so cool. It's fascinating.
And they are then all connected together. So when they say that this technology blended 3D and 2D graphics, yeah, they weren't kidding. They turned 3D into 2D and 2D into 3D. It's totally unique. It's completely its own thing. So I wouldn't quite call it 2.5D graphics, but it's very impressive nonetheless. It's something we had never seen in a fighting game up to this point, and I can't really think of any example that we've seen of it since. Although, even though I am praising this animation,
that would do this.
Nothing even remotely comparable to the techniques used here, or the same process and thought process behind it, has kind of been out yet.
A breakdown of what these look like.
Yeah.
For being like unique and innovative,
like all their maps
it can make the characters look a bit unnatural at times. Because they're moving individual parts of their body that are connected at joints, it means sometimes when a character moves, it can look stiff or like they're popping and locking into place.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was puppet at first. It was because of the way that moves.
Yeah, a little bit. But regardless, even though it looks a little bit unnatural, it still gives us a very unique feel to it, which may be kind of off-putting for some people. I don't have any issues with it. It's something new and cool, to me at least.
These 3D models, they code the entire thing in a thick, crunchy, cel-shaded style, and personally, I love cel-shaded art, but it does cause the screen to kind of wobble at times.
A little bit.
But despite these problems, there was one big advantage that came from using the SMA system. Because they could animate the body parts individually and then reuse frames, or more accurately, 3D models for different animations, that allowed them to do something that almost no other fighting game had been able to accomplish at this point. At least, not up to this level. Battle damage. Yeah, before, if you wanted to give a character battle damage in a sprite game, you'd have to redraw every line of animation with the new damage look. But here, each character would have multiple parts of their body that could be changed when it got damaged, whether it be ripped clothes, messy hair, scratched up skin, and the developers would only have to remake that one part of the body. Then they would just take that brand new body part they made
and connect more work.
Well, who knows? Maybe for them it didn't feel like it.
It's more customizable, but you're still having to make multiple sheets for individual parts.
To the rest of the body like Legos. Tanaka said they wanted to capture the beauty of fighters who kept going even when they were hurt, like a classic shonen protagonist in a manga. And on some level, I feel they succeeded. It did create an experience unlike anything we had seen in any other fighting game at the time. I mean, there were 3D games out there that allowed you to change your character model around mid-fight, such as the aforementioned Dragon Ball Budokai games, also made by Dims, but those games were just slapping a new skin on top of an existing model. And there were games like Fighting Vipers that allowed you to break characters' armor in different chunks depending on where you hit them, but that armor was an additional model on top of a 3D model that was just
3D.
popping off.
That's why you can have games like Rivals with multiple skins and things, because ultimately the animation has nothing to do with the model itself. It's a rig with that animation baked into its curves. So you can put that on a different model as long as the shapes are pretty much the same, and that animation will transfer pretty much seamlessly. There might be a little cleanup necessary, but with like a game where you're doing everything in real time, you can effectively just slap any 3D model on top of it as long as the geometry is remotely the same.
Yeah, unlike with 2D where you have to just draw a new sprite and then just re-rig it. Yeah, that makes sense.
But Rumblefish wasn't changing a skin around, and it wasn't just removing a layer from a 3D model. Rumblefish was altering specific parts of the overall model, so that way you could get increasing battle damage effects that stuck with you throughout your entire arcade run, visually creating a new experience as you played, and using cell shading to disguise these 3D models.
Are kind of still puppet rigs. They're just the most complicated puppet rig I've seen.
Oh, at the time, did they have the normal tech for just making a puppet rig? Because this feels like they...
When did this game come out?
That's a good question.
1983. When did Flash come out? I don't think so. I don't think they would have had puppet animation like that.
To make them look like sprites. And they were doing it all on a 2D plane, something that was still, to this point, almost completely unheard of. As I said, many people consider this to be one of the earliest 2.5D fighters out there, and even though I don't consider it to be 2.5D myself, you can definitely see the DNA of these later games here in Rumblefish. This is definitely the precursor to the art style that would dominate the fighting game community in just a couple years.
You can tell.
But here's the other
are separate from her chest.
Yeah, they are just flying around.
Important thing about these battle damage models. This is where the name Rumblefish came from. The game's director, Masahiro Omori, said that the breakaway clothes and the armor reminded him of beta fish, also known as Siamese fighting fish. These are a type of fish that if you
Look
put
at
them in a bowl together, they will rip each other apart until only one of them is left. And he said that there was a beauty in the way they fought, but it was still savage as they would literally tear parts of the other fish off, which made him think of these breakable character models. And beta fish are also known as rumblefish.
There you go.
In fact, if you look at the logo for rumblefish, you can see two of these beta fish swimming around it. So there you go. People have always wondered where the game's name came from, and now you finally have an answer. So no, it was not named after the Francis Ford Coppola movie and the novel that inspired it. Or was it? In the novel The Rumblefish, the character Motorcycle Boy is fascinated by beta fish and dubs them Rumblefish.
Oh my god.
That's funny. Indirectly connected.
Yeah, probably.
Yes, referring to beta fish as rumblefish originated in this novel. And even though it caught on and became a common term for them, it does mean that there is a connection, however small, between this game and the novel and movie from decades before.
I think it's definitely more of now this thing is known by this name because of this series, but not direct reference to the series, more so just because it popularized the term for beta fish. Yeah, that's fair.
That is a long
way
to go to blow the mind of that one person in the audience who is aware of what both these things are, but we managed to do it.
Inspired by Castlevania? Maybe not directly, but if it's a Metroidvania game, then indirectly it is.
But alright, I think we've talked enough about the backstory of this game. It's time that we actually dive into and take a look at...
The Rumblefish.
The Rumblefish.
We will now begin the FFS.
Okay. Go off.
I love fighting game intros. I never knew they were so beautiful.
The Rumblefish.
The Rumblefish was released in arcades in Japan in March 2004, and as I've said, it might not have made the biggest splash upon its arrival, but there was something special about this game that drew people in. Outside of its original animation, the game also had a...
It was 2004.
2004.
The date that I looked up was wrong.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, that seemed really old.
It's a little too old.
I got the date from the novel. Google confused itself.
Oh my god. Well, damn. We'll leave that in the video for people to laugh at us.
Flash had been out for like, what did I say? I don't know, 8 years or something.
I guess once again, they had a vision, and the usual puppet stuff
nothing like any
there.
sort of puppeting I had ever seen on sprites like this.
Grungy, edgy urban aesthetic, while also being bright and colorful with memorable designs that stood out from the far more muted down and desaturated look that a lot of other franchises were going for at the time. But where this game really stood out was in the combat. This was a 5-button fighter: light punch, strong punch, light kick, strong kick, and a dodge button. And these buttons could easily be combined together for combos that pretty much anyone could pull off. That's because much like Darkstalkers, Rumblefish used a chain combo system. You can make 3-hit combos by going from one attack to another attack at the same level, or to an attack of a higher level. So in other words, you could go from light punch to light kick to strong kick, light kick to light punch to strong punch, light punch to strong kick, you get the idea.
Yep.
And you might hear that and think, wait, so you can only do 3-button combos? To start with, but there is so much customization that you can do after that. You can combo these 3 hits into your specials or into your supers, but here's where things get really interesting. You may notice in the bottom left corner there that you have not 1, but 2 super meters. An offense meter and a defense meter. The offensive meter builds up as you attack, and the defensive meter builds up as you block. And each of these meters gives you access to different abilities. The developers decided to do this because, according to Tanaka, many of the 2D games at the time were ones like Guilty Gear, which lend themselves to offensive playstyles. So they established a system that encouraged both offense and defense.
Okay. I
like that.
From my understanding of it, like Guilty Gear has always been you got to go in, they want you to be hyper aggressive with how you play to make the matches more exciting. But But I suppose since we're trying to do something new, maybe you want to cater more towards a more defensive game plan and reward blocking in some way. So having a separate meter for that is an interesting idea, which I've never seen any other fighting game do before. Because it's always just like one super meter, and you either spend it on doing something defensive or offensive, depending on your character's kit. But here it's like specific to that, which is cool.
Yeah.
We'll see how it plays out.
Each character has an offensive super that does huge damage, and a defensive super that is typically like a burst that gets the opponent off of you and creates some distance. Each of these supers require 100% of their respective meters. But if you have both meters full, then you can pull off a critical art, which is an even larger, more damaging attack. However, you can use 50% of either meter for some really unique abilities that spice up the gameplay in so many ways. On defense, if you hit the dodge at the moment you block a hit, then you can consume half your defense meter to do what's called an impact break. This is essentially a Street Fighter 3 style parry where you'll cause a brief pause in your opponent's attack. Now, you might hear that and think that means that you can then counterattack in this opening, and you can, but the opening is so small. However, there is another ability that can help you with this, and it's one of the best abilities in the entire game. If you hit both heavy attacks together and spend half of your offense meter, then you can perform an advanced attack. This is a linker that will cancel whatever attack you're doing into a charging attack that can then lead into any other attack after that. What this means is that you can do a 3-hit combo, then spend half your offense meter and do an advanced attack, then start up a new 3-hit combo and finish it off with a special for an easy-to-perform long combo for big damage.
Cool.
But there are so many more uses for the advanced attack, and that's what makes it such a good tool in this game. You can also use it to open a combo. Your opponent thinks they're safe because they're just outside of your attack range, or they're starting up their own attack and they know that you don't have anything quick enough to hit them in time. Hit those heavy buttons, use that meter, and bam, you do an instant charge on them, and now they're the one getting attacked. And as you can probably guess, yes, you can combo from an impact break into an advanced attack for the ultimate table turning setup. You hit those buttons fast enough, and your opponent goes from attacking you to being the one getting attacked real quick. It is crazy to me to think that they designed this game thinking there were too many offensive heavy games out there, and they ended up creating one of the best offensive mechanics of this generation.
Well, I do think it's because you can spend half of either of your meters in order to do this. They probably had the thought process of, even if you're playing a more defensive style, if you're able to catch your opponent off guard like that, then you can just immediately flip it just by noticing like the breaks within your opponent's offense, or obviously timing things perfectly and breaking it.
It's still rewarding defensive play.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, even if you play defensive, you still have to finish them off, right?
And it's not like it's so completely
it
useless
transition
for offensive play either. Like they can use it too, but I can certainly see the benefits for defensive play in this one.
And there's one other ability that uses these meters, and this one just feels flat out broken to me. If you have 100% offense meter and you hit both light attacks together, then you will perform what is known as a jolt attack. This is an unblockable attack that lets you summon out Zawardo, and you freeze time and get to just wail on your opponent. Now, in all fairness, you would probably be able to do more damage to your opponent by using that meter on a super or 2 advanced attacks. But if your opponent is blocking and you can't figure out a way around that, just give him a good old and turn them into your own personal punching bag. Although I will say the attack is slow, so you can dodge it if you're watching for it. In fact, speaking of the dodge, as I mentioned, it is tied to a single button. And as you can imagine, you can use it to get past certain attacks, but you can also use it while pressing down to do a short hop. Listen, you're watching the footage, and you might think that due to this unique animation style, it looks a little bit clunky, and honestly, it can feel like that at times. But when you're using every resource this game gives you, then the mobility in this game is way higher than you would expect. Now, you might hear all this and think, well, if these abilities are that good, then they're probably rare. You probably have to spend the entire match building up to it. That's the great thing. Your meter in this game charges fast. I said to do an advanced attack, you have to spend half your meter, but you can get that after maybe 2 combos, so you can constantly throw it out and not have to worry about. So often in fighting games, and hell, all games for that matter, what decides the difference between a good ability and a bad ability is the cost to use it. How high is your cool moves budget? And the Rumblefish just chucks cool moves cash right at you. And when you throw in the fact that this game can let you bounce an opponent off the wall, hit them on the ground, or even hit them in a way just right that will send them flying into the air in slow motion for an air juggle, it takes what sounds like a relatively simple combat and spices it up in a variety of ways. But what is the Rumblefish about? In the beginning of the 21st century, a massive earthquake destroys an unnamed island
I think that's
city.
unfortunately, though, a major cost to their animation style here. Is their cool moves look like their normal moves. I'm watching this gameplay and I can't tell what's supposed to be a cool move and what's a normal move, to be honest with you.
Okay. I mean, it's good that you're here, because as like a more casual fighting game player, you just don't see it because it's not made apparent to you with like a zoom in and a cinematic and dynamic camera angles and shit like that we'd see in more modern fighting games. You just kind of see like extra moves, punches, with little like purple effects maybe, or you see it on like the side of the screen that says like advanced attack or whatever. That's how I know that's happening, but yeah, to the casual viewer it's a little hard to spot.
Well, that's what I mean though. It's like, okay, if you're going into this being like, okay, like the cool moves are what sell you on like you're doing fun shit. It's like, okay, having number be bigger can do that for some people, but for me, not at all. If I push the cool moves button, I want to see something cool. Especially because I struggle to get combos off. So it's like, if I'm going to get it, I want to see it.
Oh yeah, that's completely fair. It's just hype for more casual players to just keep on trying the input. And then when they actually get the input and hit the opponent, oh man, it just feels so good just to do that.
Like when you're learning a new fighting game, which is for me, whenever I'm playing a fighting game, when you get off your big super move for the first time, it's the coolest part of a fighting game.
Yeah. I do think that this was also kind of built during an era where they didn't consider like an esports scene or like a viewer experience. This is very much a arcade game where you're playing against an opponent and you're like trying to perfect your skills and whatnot. So maybe the whole like flashy supers thing wasn't really much of a consideration yet, or it was due to a style limit. I'm not really sure on that front, but that's also something you have to consider. Because like more modern fighting games, you have to think about the viewer experience. I don't really know if they had that intention in mind originally with some of the older arcade machines.
I don't know. I would almost argue it was more important back then because your entire pull is just the average person walking through an arcade. You need something to be like drawing them into your machine, right?
Well, the pull was the intro and the funky music. Didn't you see that?
I guess.
You want to play?
I guess you're right. You know, you're actually right on that. I think you would see people playing it and be like, that looks fun. But the art on the side of the machine and the intro probably does do a lot more in that aspect.
Yeah, I've never really been into an arcade before, especially not during those times. I wasn't around. I was a wee lad. I was a baby.
Really. I didn't play arcades ever.
But I assume what is happening is you have all the arcade machines kind of lined up and they're all playing their intro and blaring their music and whatnot. So they kind of have to have that be the thing that catches people's attention more so than I think like the gameplay itself. The gameplay just has to look appealing once you get into it. And if you're super into this, then like this is really cool. It also has a unique style to it. But yeah, I think the main catch is like the intro and the machine, obviously.
Most people would probably assume that this would be set somewhere in Japan since Dimps is a Japanese company, but there are Japanese characters in this game, and after they win, it says they return to their home country, so that's not it. And in the sequel, there's one character's ending where it looks like they're walking through Central Park, so then, considering that this is on an island, I think this is supposed to be New York. Then again, I'm a New Yorker, and our favorite pastime is shoving New York into every conversation that we can, so maybe I'm seeing things. But after the city is destroyed, a massive corporation called Probe Nexus moves into the ruined city and starts rebuilding it, renaming the city Zone Prime. These names are horrible. But Zone Prime left many people with no place to go. They had lost everything in the earthquake, and now in this new, rich, high and mighty city, they were forced to live in slums. Now, Probe Nexus could help these people who had been displaced using their massive fortune to build low-cost housing in this city, or maybe create some jobs that would pay enough to get these people back on their feet. Or they could set up a tournament and force them to fight each other for their own amusement. You all know which one they chose.
You could cure cancer. I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs.
I want a fighting game tournament arc, damn it. and I'm gonna have it. If I have the money to make it happen, I'm gonna do it.
Yes, Probe Nexus sets up a tournament called Fight for Survival, a badass name, which the game keeps referring to as FFS. Immediately sucking all the badassness out of it.
Bruh.
Yeah, nothing makes your fighting tournament sound intimidating like naming it for sake. I'm sorry, but that's all I could think about anytime that popped up on screen. But the FFS is a brutal competition where the entire island
I mean,
is
to
the
be
ring.
fair, for the contestants of the Fight for Survival tournament, they're probably also there. For fuck's sake. Really? This is what we gotta do? Come on, man.
Oh, man. Honestly, though, between, like, Umbrella Corps versus this corporation, the fighting game tournament sounds a little bit more appealing to me. It's just me, though.
I mean,
It's bad, but not that bad.
Attracting competitors from all over with the hopes of winning enough money to achieve their wildest dreams. According to Al Mori, the story was inspired by series like Baki the Grappler and, surprisingly enough, Fight Club.
Oh.
Which sounds odd, but when it comes to the tone of the game, I can see a little bit of overlap in there. There's a little bit of Tyler Durden in these characters. These fighters include our
talk about
protagonist
Fight Club.
Zin. Not much is known about him, or anyone else in the game for that matter.
Bruh.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and warn you right now. You get the sense playing this game that there's a lot of lore behind these characters, but it ain't in this game. It feels almost like those old KOF devs who were working on this game kept thinking, oh, don't worry about that, we'll explain in the manga tie-in. As far as the actual in-game story goes, the arcade mode opens with a character bio, and it ends by telling you what happens to these fighters after the tournament. But it's all from Probe Nexus's point of view, so it's nothing but this character is really strong. They'll probably do well in the tournament. Or, after winning the tournament, they left, and we don't think we're going to hear from them again. I'm not kidding, I just summed up about 50% of all the info this game gives you on these characters. But I was able to piece little bits of details here and there together, so I'm going to do my best. So Zin is a young fighter with a massive chip on his shoulder who fought in an underground tournament known as Valor. While fighting in this underground tournament, he met a man known as Greed, who was the strongest fighter around. No one could touch him. He was a savage, angry monster. But for some reason, he and Zin started to bond. That is until Greed ripped through everyone in Valor and destroyed the whole tournament. Zin then spent the next several years fighting anyone he could to try and pull Greed out of hiding, earning the nickname Diablo and growing increasingly more pissed off with each year. Yeah, Zin might be the angriest fighting game protagonist who hasn't been put in charge of the Mishima Zaibatsu. But I can't lie, if I had played this game back when I was an edgy, angry teenager in the early 2000s, I would have loved this guy. Flaming red hair, long torn bandana, and constantly scowling, it's exactly what I was looking for in a fighting game protagonist back then.
I mean, Thorgi did mention before that that was the intent of the developers, to have like that shonen protagonist moment where despite all the damage that you sustained, you still stand and fight.
Yeah.
So, especially during that era, I do feel like a shonen protagonist like this probably would fit for a lot of people. Probably good a choice.
Yeah.
But Zin eventually learns that Greed is competing in the FFS, so he joins up to finally challenge him. And he's not the only one entering to find Greed. There's also the two sisters, Hikari and Kaya. They're both entering the tournament because Greed killed their father and they're seeking revenge. Hikari is a much more upbeat and hopeful character, while Kaya is colder and more serious, which is reflected in their different playstyles, as Hikari focuses more on defensive moves, such as counters that lead into throws, while Kaya has...
Look, the colors tell you everything you need to know about a character. Good character design, I'd say.
more offensive attacks and projectiles. Next is Aaron, who uses boxing-style moves. He's a smarmy pretty boy with a big ego, but he's secretly entering the tournament to get the money to buy back the orphanage that he grew up in. By the way, that information is only in this one little character map in the Japanese-only PS2 manual. There is literally zero information on him in the intro or outro in the actual game. I'm not kidding, his arcade ending just says, he describes winning to his friends. That's it. Dimps, you know providing information on your characters might get players attached to them and then want to support them in future games, right? Why do I have to explain this to a bunch of people who made KOF games? This is one of the things you're known for.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting that we kind of just swept the story under the rug. Like, who cares about that?
Yeah.
And they put so much effort into trying something new with this one. You'd think that they invest more into like making this into a series or something. Strange.
Then there's Orville, a big man who used to be a champion in the underground fighting scenes. He's also joined to face off with
I think
Greed
his
since he's
sprites look the weirdest of all of them. Actually, both of these characters on screen are the most noticeable.
Well, Garnet's boobs are just detached from her body. And
It's
Orville's
her boobs
a
and
big
his
ass man.
shoulders.
the only man who ever gave him a challenge. But unlike Zen, he's a far more calm and mature character, donating all of his winnings to charity and leading a more peaceful life with his family. He's a grappler who does massive damage, especially when he grabs you right out of an impact break, and he has charging attacks with almost infinite hits of armor on them, so if you see this guy coming at you, you best get out of the way. On the opposite end of the gameplay spectrum, though, is Typhon, a young boy entering the tournament as part of his training. He's super agile and is all about flipping and zipping and jumping and never keeping still for a freaking second. He is easily the most annoying character to fight in this game. I'm pretty sure I won about half my fights against him by time over, just because he spent most of the match jumping over me.
It's always the tiny ones that are annoying to fight against. This guy's hitbox is also probably smaller than everybody else.
Another super agile character is Garnet, who specializes in powerful kicks. She's a thief entering the tournament for the prize money, let's just say she's also who the developers probably envisioned when they came up with the breakable clothing mechanic.
Oh yeah.
Then there's Viren, a violent man who mostly fights using weapons. He's entering the tournament to use the money to create his own gang. And lastly, there's Boyd, a character who uses powerful punches and has a mechanic where he builds up stocks with certain moves, then uses those stocks to enhance other moves.
I'll be honest.
I do think it's really funny. Yeah. Go on.
No, you go on. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, all the characters we've seen so far fight really grounded, and then this guy comes out with the laser fingers.
I was gonna say, like, Boyd over here seems like the least suspicious guy. He's just a tourist in a Hawaiian shirt, just walking by, and is like, "Oh, a tournament? Sure, I'll enter, I guess." But then he comes out with these gadgets and whatnot. Like, he's much more than he appears to be. That's for sure.
Boyd really embodies that this game had a ton of lore that they did not want to tell you. When you start the arcade mode, his background is literally just, yeah, this guy doesn't seem much like a fighter. I don't even know why he's here. But when you win with Boyd, you see him walking off into the distance, and the narrator mentions, oh, by the way, turns out he just happens to resemble a well-known assassin. Also, a few Probe Nexus board members were found dead after the tournament. That's a weird coincidence, huh?
What? I guess that's what makes him such a good assassin. He's so, like, unassuming. You wouldn't think that he is.
Yeah, it turns out this kindly old man in a Hawaiian t-shirt is actually a deadly assassin, and you can see that in his combat because in addition to taking battle damage, once he's been hit...
Yeah, what is happening with his hat? Is there, like, a creature inside there?
There's a turtle or something under his hat, but his battle damage rips his pants so you see his boxers on his butt.
Enough times, his eyes turn red and he starts gritting his teeth. Another example of the cool stuff that they were able to pull off with the SMA system. Now, speaking of these arcade modes, there's a couple of other interesting things to point out. First up is when you select the character, you'll notice a number on screen. That number relates to how often that character wins. This was something that they put in specifically to create tension in real life. Think about it. You go up to the arcade and start looking at all the characters, and as you scroll through them, you see how often people at the arcade have won with that character. Then you notice that, let's say, Orville has a crazy high number, and you realize, oh damn, someone at this arcade is a killer with Orville. Imagine how you would feel.
This is like Rivals win rates nowadays. Like you can see, like, oh wow, a lot of people are playing this character, but no one's winning.
It's fully on display, and I think that's kind of a fun idea. In a way, it's a unique way to do a high scoreboard, where instead of just, you know, the username of some dude in the arcade who gets all the high scores on all the machines, there's somebody out there who is just really freaking good at this character that I kind of hate to play against. Damn.
Then when someone comes up to challenge you and they pick Orville, it's the real world equivalent of going into ranked matches online and finding someone 4 leagues above you and knowing, well, I'm in danger. What a wild idea this was. But when you go through arcade mode, you fight 7 different battles, all leading up to the finale, where you're greeted by the representatives of Probe Nexus, and you're told that you now have to fight the champion, Greed. You all saw that coming. There was no drama left in this reveal.
Yeah.
Yes, he's the reigning champ of the FFS, and now you must face him, and dear God, this is an insane leap in difficulty.
Is this an SNK boss? Is this SNK syndrome boss all over again? Boss syndrome? Yeah, I'm sure it is.
For an arcade fighter, this game's difficulty isn't too high, but Greed then comes in to correct that. Not only is he fast with long normals, he's got an explosive attack that reaches to the sky, keeping most characters from being able to cross him up, and as you fight him, he'll slowly start to turn red. Once he enters this fiery state, he just has unlimited offense and defensive meters for the rest of the game.
What the fuck?
And you might hear that and think, oh, so that means that he can just do his supers non-stop? Forget that! It means he can do impact break and advance attacks non-stop.
What?
That means if you start attacking him and he blocks, you are now stuck in his combo. You hit him, he blocks, instant impact break, instant advance attack, big damage to you.
What the fuck? And it's the computer. Of course it's gonna time it correctly.
Yeah.
Huh?
That's insane.
That will happen almost every single time. It's the equivalent of playing Killer Instinct, and the computer just always combo breakers you. So if you want to beat him, you need to learn all the mechanics of this game. You need to be able to recognize each of his attacks, and you need to have perfect response timing. Or just pick Garnet. She's got the highest jump in the game and actually is capable of leaping over his attacks and hitting him from behind, so yeah, that works too.
Cool.
So after you beat Greed, each character returns.
But then again, I also have to remember, it's an arcade game, it's meant to eat quarters and stuff.
Yeah.
It's the usual deal. I get it.
Home, and as I said, there's pretty much nothing to these character endings. Almost all of them are just they took the prize money or they didn't take the prize money. Although I do think that Zin's ending is Greed saying, good, someone beat me, I can finally sleep now. And Zin wants him to keep getting back up and fighting, but Greed refuses. And then it just ends with Zin staring off into the distance, realizing he doesn't know what to do with his life now.
No.
For a game that had like zero deep story elements, it's kind of wild that it just ends with the protagonist having an existential crisis, realizing he dedicated his whole life to taking down one guy and it was all for nothing. I'll give you that, Rumblefish, that's actually pretty unique for a fighting game story. I don't think the next Street Fighter is going to end with Ryu staring off into the distance, realizing maybe the answer doesn't lie in the heart of battle. Now, when it comes to the game's reception, that's kind of hard to judge. As I said, it was around this time that the arcade scene was dying, so there weren't many records of what were the top most played arcade games each year. Now, the game did get a PS2 port the next year, but it was only in Japan, and even the sites that are normally pretty reliable about reporting video game sales don't have any information on it. Although I did joke earlier about them getting a manga adaptation, shockingly enough, that actually did happen.
Oh,
I can't find any scans of it, but the game did get a short recurring manga in Monthly Magazine Z. Oh no, wait, I'm sorry, my mistake. That was The Rumblefish.
Is that a different series entirely? The Rumblefish?
I don't know. Is it a typo?
Yeah, when the official manga adaptation of your game doesn't even get the name right, probably not the best sign for your future success.
Oh no!
Well, the game was able to get a sequel the very next year, and sadly, it would be stuck on arcades. No PS2 re-release for this one. But even with that limitation, it was still able to find an audience and become a fighting game cult classic.
The Rumblefish 2. Oh my. Oh my. Whoa.
I like these names.
Bazoo.
The Rumblefish 2.
The Rumblefish 2 was released in arcades in Japan in March 2005, and like many fighting games at the time that were released only a year after the previous installment, it isn't so much a sequel as far as the modern-day equivalent of a season pass.
Yeah.
It didn't change the game around in any huge way, it simply adds some new characters, a new final boss, and a handful of balance changes. but those handful of changes vastly improve the gameplay. I'll let you in on some behind the scenes details here. Normally when I do these retrospectives, I play through the games in order so that way I can better understand how the games change and grow. But because of some technical issues, I had to play the Rumblefish 2 first for this one. And going from the second game to the first game was like deflating the wheels of your bike. Rumblefish 2 feels so much smoother. And that makes sense. Remember, the SMA system that Dimps was using was created from the ground up for the first game. They literally had to build that whole game from scratch. There was no guide and no blueprints out there of how to use this system to make a fighting game. So even though I do really like the first Rumblefish, I think that is a good game. I think it is a lot of fun. It can feel clunky at times, but with the Rumblefish 2, they had an extra year to figure everything out, and now it all feels so much better. Moving, dodging, comboing, it's all improved. And the combat itself has been enhanced as every single character received brand new moves, with some characters feeling completely different. I really didn't care for Orville in the first game, but now he's one of my favorites in this roster. The slight adjustments to his existing moves and the 1 or 2 new abilities that they gave him make him far more fun. But here's where the big changes come in. In the previous game, you had an offense and defense meter, and you could use half of these meters for specific moves, or you could use all the meter for super moves. But now your offense and defense meter have 3 stocks to them, and this changes everything. Now Impact Break and Advanced Attack only require 1 stock, meaning rather than using half of your total meter, you only need 1/3 of it. So that's not a huge change, but it is a little better. Here's where things start to get wild. Your offense super now also only needs 1 stock. Meaning if you've got 2 stocks, you can do a combo into an advanced attack, into another combo, and then end it with a super. Your defensive super requires 2 stocks, but considering that getting your opponent off of you is a very handy ability, that makes sense, and still cheaper than in the last game.
For sure.
Speaking of your defensive moves, the Impact Break is far easier to do now because rather than simply creating a tiny opening in your opponent's attacks, now if you successfully pull off an Impact Break, your opponent is actually slowed down.
Something.
Hey, well, we were in the early days of video game development. It was a fun time. And these games are just so charming. It's like one of my favorite parts of going through these fighting game retrospectives, honestly. Of just seeing how modern day things that we just enjoy and kind of take for granted a little bit came to be through all these like hard work and development and cool new ideas at the time.
For a moment. And when your opponent is stuck in slow motion, even for a second, it makes it so much easier to counterattack them. Now, I should point out in the first game, you could perform what was called a double impact break, which would require you hitting the dodge button twice, and this would slow down your opponent and increase your window to counterattack them, but it would also require 100% of your defense meter. Now you just need to hit the dodge button once and use up only 1/3 of your meter, so it's better in every way.
Oh my god, look at Lud's face. Lud got his face beaten in. It's all puffy. Lud also seems to have some sort of temperature meter here on the bottom right. Is bro overheating? Yeah.
The Jolt Break also saw a huge change for this new game. In the last game,
like had little brother or something. He gets hot in battle like he did.
It's like Serby during the summertime. Die.
Had to spend your entire offense meter to pull it off, which makes sense. It's an unblockable time stop. But now, guess what? It also only requires 1 stock of your offense meter.
Bruh.
It no longer freezes the opponent in place though, instead it launches them into the air in slow motion, but still unblockable and you can still jump up there and start hammering away at them. It is still an incredibly good ability. And I'm not even done! There's now brand new abilities to spend your resources on that makes this gameplay even more varied and customizable. There's now the Impact Blow, a move where if you hit the opponent with an attack that would knock them back or into the air, you can hit the dodge button and spend 1 bar of offense meter, and now your opponent can't recover. Yeah, you know how in fighting games, if you knock your opponent away, then they can recover in the air, so that way you can't just keep comboing them? Spend 1 stock of offense meter, you get to keep comboing them. Combine that with the fact that this game increases the stun time when your opponent is hitting walls, and you get to do crazy long strings just using basic specials and smart meter management. But that's all technical stuff. That's stuff that requires frame.
There's a lot to think about so far from the mechanics that
I know exactly how this would go. Is I get pinned in the corner and someone would do an never-ending combo string on me and I die.
Touch of Death, infinite combo or something. Well, Thorgi hasn't mentioned any infinites yet. That being said, though,
It doesn't matter. I'm bad at the game, so even if I had an opportunity to get out, I won't, and they'll do it all over again.
Data knowledge and perfect timing and looking up combos online. What about the flashy additions? What's that big new addition in here that's just going to draw all the eyes to the cabinet? Now, if you hit one light attack button and one strong attack button of a different type, in other words, light punch, strong kick, light kick, strong punch, and you spin one stock of both your offense and defense meter, then your character can enter into Boost Drive. This is a power-up state that is unique to every single character. Yeah, every character gets their own install. They get a dark dimension in this game. Zen powers up all of his special moves. Orville gains super armor. One of the new characters just gets giant revolving hearts that do damage on hit. And again, it's for only a third of your 2 meters. I had heard people talk highly of Rumblefish 2 for a long time, but I had only ever played Rumblefish 1 because it's the only game that got a home console release, and I can't emulate games without setting my PC on fire. So playing it for this retrospective was the very first time I ever actually got to try this sequel out. And yeah, I totally get it. I get why this has the cult following that it does. At its core, Rumblefish is very basic. There are 3 hit combos that you can perform easily going from one button to another. But when you layer that with the wild amount of abilities that can extend the combos in so many different ways, the Rumblefish becomes like a fine steak. The meat underneath might not be anything special, but if you know all the different spices to put on top of it, it becomes a 5-star meal. So now that we know.
Yeah, I can definitely understand what Thorgi is trying to get at here. In some ways, the only thing I can compare it to is like my experience playing Grand Blue Fantasy versus Rising, where it does have the same like 3-hit auto combo system, and you do have the same considerations of like going into a special and spending meter to end things with a super, and basically every single character is going to run into something similar like that with some finer details that higher level players will do. That being said, though, this game kind of almost feels like that, but then it goes even further beyond. So in some ways, I can see if you're really dedicated and you really enjoy playing, the path to get to there seems achievable, as opposed to it being like an execution limitation or like a threshold that you have to overcome. It's more of a do this basic thing, but just string it together with this other basic thing in a way. Of course, well, this is just my perspective. Now, I can't exactly call myself a casual fighting game player anymore, but I can kind of see the process that you go through if you started from 0 all the way up till there.
Yeah, I can see that.
Know how the sequel spiced up the gameplay. Who are our new
The
fighters?
ceiling is much higher.
Well, as you can imagine, every character from the last game returned, but now there were 4 additional fighters. There was Cheryl, a German assassin and spy who specialized in using steel threads to set up traps across the stage. Mito, a young stance fighter from Spain, entering the tournament to find her father's missing sword. Bazoo, a savage shark-like boxer from Australia. He's got super slow attacks, but he still covers a long distance with his reach, and he can smack the ground to cause debris to fall on his opponents.
Bruh.
And lastly, from England, there's Lude, a young energetic tournament fighter who signs up to prove himself against Zen and Greed. Lude isn't exactly the new protagonist of the game, but he's definitely the new poster boy. They splattered his face all over this game. Anytime that you look up any material on the Rumblefish 2, his face is front and center. Which is so weird to me because he's a very energetic and goofy character, and at this time, many fighting games were going from more lighthearted protagonists to darker, edgier characters, and here we had the exact opposite. We went from the guy who was gritting his teeth so hard he was cracking his fillings, to a guy who feels like he was designed specifically to be a Shonen Jump protagonist. Now, I mentioned that there were several advancements made from the first game.
So that's not actually parts damage. That's actually part of his mechanic, and then he cools his own face off using ice?
Yeah.
He almost feels like a joke character, but he's very main character coded. Interesting.
Yeah.
Into the second, and you can really see that in these new fighters. We got stance fighters, we got someone setting up traps, Lude has a heat meter that allows him to perform EX moves. This is all stuff that they couldn't have figured out back in that first game. Heck, Loot even has a feature where if he gets damaged enough, he gets big, puffy, swollen cheeks.
Oh, okay.
And then you can use his defensive super to heal that back. That doesn't sound like anything special, but is a level of animation detail that they could not have done in the first game. So those were the new playable characters, but there was a handful of other new faces hidden around the game. First up is the new boss, Beatrice. She's the granddaughter of the former owner of Probe Nexus, and when her grandfather stepped down after the last game, she took over. She starts the match off with full offense and defense meter, but at least it isn't infinite like it was with Greed. Then again, she attacks so often and perfectly blocks all of your moves that both of her meters are constantly rising, so they might as well be infinite. Beatrice loves to load the screen.
Oh my god, what is a giant fish in the background there? It looks like a giant-ass eel. What's happening?
Lord, I love him.
Up with energy projectiles. She is one of the biggest zoners in this game, with some attacks literally filling up the entire bottom half of the screen. She also has one of the most shocking armor breaks because she looks all professional and business-like on the outside, but if you break all of her armor, you learn that apparently she likes to cosplay as Ivy from Soul Calibur on the weekends.
Oh!
The guys at Dimps really wanted to keep arcade goers pumping in quarters however they could. Also, I have to
It's the perfect motivation. Break all of her armor. Gotta
Even
get good
if you
at the
don't
game.
win, you get something out of it.
point this out real quick. As I said,
I mean, to be completely fair, I will admit that I did grind the arcade mode for Soul Calibur because I wanted to collect enough in-game currency to unlock more cosmetics. It's a motivator.
No, for sure.
Very valid
I'm
motivator.
a cosmetics grinder, very much so. That's the easiest way to get me to continue playing a game.
Every single time, though. I always think back to the Blade and Soul days.
Beatrice and her family have been the ones running Probe Nexus, and her bio, it says that she's from America. So yeah, I'm going to double down on saying that this game is set in the destroyed remains of New York City. Somewhere in the background, while these anime characters are fighting, Snake Plissken is secretly trying to rescue the President of the United States. But there were two more secret fights in here. If you finish the first 3 matches off with offensive supers, then Greed will appear and reptile his way into the 4th fight. He's not nearly as hard as he was in the last game, but you only get 1 shot to beat him, so the stakes are even higher. And if you beat the 5th, 6th, and 7th fights with offensive supers, then an 8th match will be added to the arcade ladder, and you go up against the brand new character, Hazama. Hazama was the assistant to the former head of Probe Nexus, and now he's working for Beatrice, but behind the scenes, he has his own plans and is collecting data on these fighters for a mysterious reason. Which we will never learn because there wasn't a 3rd game, but you can tell he was supposed to be a big deal. Because not only was Hazama now a secret boss fight in this game, but he and Cheryl were also added to the PS2 version of the first Rumblefish, which was released just a few months after the sequel hit arcades. Which is one of the only times I've ever heard of characters from the sequel being retroactively added to the original game. But while Cheryl was there in the base roster, Hazama was a secret fighter. If you beat the game without losing a match, then you would unlock Greed. But after unlocking Greed, you would then have to beat the game again without losing a match, and then you would get to fight Hazama. Yeah, not only did they go back and shove Hazama into the first Rumblefish, but they made him even harder to unlock than the actual boss of the game. So why did Dimps try so hard to make Hazama a thing? I mean, he's the assistant to the head of Probe Nexus. He's not a Kula, he's Wayland Smithers. Well, because he was secretly the one really running the FFS and Probe Nexus. Again, Dimps decided to keep all that lore outside the game itself, so if you just play through the game, you'll have no idea why he's important for any reason. Even his arcade ending in both games just says he goes back to looking for test subjects and continues his experiments. Bet it would have been cool if you had told us what those experiments were for, but whatever, I guess we can just use our imagination. But there you have it, everything that there is to know about the Rumblefish and Rumblefish 2. Dimps' biggest push up to this point to create their own original IP, and sadly their last. Well, okay. They would put out 2 original mobile games in 2012 and 2013, Alien vs. Gunner and Phantom Gate Chronicles, but when it comes to original arcade and console games, yeah, Rumblefish 2 was the end. Which makes me think that this big push from them to create this new impressive technology for this game might not have paid off? What?
Yeah. Considering the previous track record of these developers and games they worked on, investing way too much and not making as much back, kinda the MO.
I hate to say too, at this time, even it's like when you had 2D sprites, they were really pretty 2D sprites, right? And the animation, like you look at the King of Fighters and like the really great sprite work that was being done in the 2D. And you're getting pushed into the 3D, so all the new 3D model fighters are going to be kind of the new shiny thing.
Yeah.
So this kind of 2D sprite with kind of jankiness to it just doesn't look very good. And it's like, I think even when you look at it at this, like from the perspective of someone in that era, it's still gonna look kind of jank.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're going to ultimately be comparing it to the 2D sprites, because that's the style they're trying to emulate with this new system. And it doesn't look as good.
I was going to say that we have an appreciation for the style because hindsight, and it is completely different from a lot of things that we have seen before. So it looks cool to us, but yeah, I can definitely understand the perspective
we
they're talking
appreciate
about.
the jankiness of it as charm, whereas when it came out, it just was an uglier version of what they already had.
Yeah.
Effectively. And it wasn't the new shiny thing.
Like, if you really wanted to play a 2D fighter, why wouldn't you be playing King of Fighters, right, at this time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I completely get that. I can see why maybe it wasn't able to sell well, but as time went on, it developed a following because of its unique style.
Exactly.
A bunch of SNK devs spent a lot of money on something that didn't pan out? I'm shocked. Shocked, I say. In fact, Rumblefish 2 did so poorly at the arcades, and Rumblefish 1 did so poorly on the PS2 that, as I said earlier, they never ported Rumblefish 2 to anything. Meaning this fan-favorite game was locked in the arcades. Although, that decision might not have been up to Dims. Remember, Dims made this game because Sammy hired them to make something for the Atomiswave, meaning Sammy owned it. And if you watched our BlazBlue retrospective, you probably know where I'm going with this.
Oh boy.
Sammy spent years trying to merge with Sega, and when Sega hit hard times after the death of the Dreamcast, Sammy slid in and bought them up, merging with them and handing all their IPs over to the Big Blue Hedgehog. At which point Sega proceeded to do nothing with them. So yeah, shortly after the PS2 port of the first Rumblefish came out, Sega looked at those sales figures and said, nope, lock it in the vault, put it next to Skies of Arcadia.
Thorgi an arcade cabinet collector? I feel like he would be.
I would have to assume he is. It's probably the same similar feeling to a lot of the OG fighting game heads. I would assume most of them have some sort of form of arcade if they have the funds for it.
At least one cabinet somewhere in there.
Yeah, I have no idea how many Max has, but he definitely has a ton. Of just like the OG ones lying around.
My neighbors growing up collected old cabinets like that. It's one of those things where it's like, if I had my own house and my own like infinite money to buy things on, I think it would be really cool to have one. But yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I agree. Just like a game room with all the arcade machines just lined up of some classics. I would love to have that.
And Billy Hatcher, because you're never going to see it again. But after years of fighting for it, Dimps was finally able to get the rights to the Rumblefish back from Sammy. And in 2012, they celebrated this by finally giving fans another arcade port. What? Yeah, after getting the rights to the Rumblefish back, rather than giving audiences a home port like they had been asking for, they instead decided to put out a new version of the Rumblefish 2 in arcades with a few small balance changes. Ah, yes, because that's where you want to go to get eyes on your game in 2012.
Okay.
The arcades.
2012? we should probably start adapting with the times at this point.
I was gonna say, I don't know that arcades even barely existed anymore in 2012.
Yeah. This was an interesting decision. I guess the developers were really just invested into the arcade experience and tried to keep making it happen, but really the environment was just changing. It's unfortunate.
Truly, Dimps had their finger on the pulse of the gaming audience at the time. And shockingly enough, not only did this arcade re-release not do that great, most people don't even know this version of the game exists. So after spending years trying to get the Rumblefish back, Dims proceeded to throw it right back into their own vault. And then they would spend the next several years going back to the licensed property mines, continuing to put out wave after wave of anime games. But then, after another decade of silence, last year in 2022, Dims out of nowhere paired up with 3GOO, a studio famous for porting Western IPs to Japan, most notably Dead by Daylight, and they announced that they were going to finally port Rumblefish 2 to all major consoles and would be coming out that very year. This was wild. There was no hint that this was coming at all. It just appeared out of nowhere and it was going to be releasing in a matter of months. This has been a trend recently as many older fighting games have been getting re-releases or have been getting announced to get re-releases. I think a lot of this comes from the rise in popularity of Fightcade and emulation. I think these older studios who have had these games just sitting around their garage for the past 2 decades have begun to look at the internet and say, wait, people are actually playing our old games?
That's the thing. As long as it's accessible and for people to buy and easy to buy, people will inevitably buy it. So why not, right? Like, especially if you're selling it online, there isn't that whole process of like getting the physical copy and kind of exporting it, going through taxes and whatnot. That was going to be like an extra added cost and risk for the company. So if it's a lot easier and a lot less risky, you might as well have it out there somewhere for people to enjoy. At least that's my thought process.
Something a lot of studios and publishers and all medias kind of don't realize is if you make something easy for people to consume, they will just do it the way you present it to them. The more hoops you make someone have to jump through, the more likely you are to push someone to emulation. And if there's no legal means to get it, then what do people do? Right?
Yeah, exactly. I do think as well that maybe they had seen the rise of like all of these older ports kind of actually selling well and doing well on online stores like Steam. Like SNK is really good at making sure that every single one of their games is on there and you can play it in some form, shape or form, even if the technology that it was used to play on is just not available anymore. It's really cool.
Steam and the Nintendo Online Arcade or whatever. I know a lot of people play through that too.
And they're doing it for free?
Free?
Are we just sitting on money over here and doing nothing with it? Yes, the answer is yes. It took you 2 decades to realize this, but yes, you are. The vast majority of people out there would far rather just pay you a reasonable amount of money to get an official re-release of the game, rather than having to go on some website that they don't fully trust, downloading some unknown files onto their very expensive computers in the hopes that maybe they can possibly run this game.
Literally what we just said. This is the majority's thought process. I'm okay with paying you money as long as I can play the game from a reliable source that, you know, you have made for me. I'm down for that. But if it's not available, then how else are you going to do it?
But even as part of this growing trend, this was a hell of a turnaround time. I mean, Rage of the Dragons has been announced to be coming back for years now, and there's still no word on that. Fallen Angels was supposed to get re-released last year, and no updates. That Breakers collection did come out, but it took a while to finally get released. But here you had the Rumblefish 2 finally coming out only 5 months after it was announced. That is an insanely fast production time. How are they able to get this done so quickly?
Oh no.
No. Yeah, sorry, but we have to talk about this. When this game was re-released, you could hear a collective deflation sound coming from the Rumblefish fanbase. This re-release cost $30, which for a re-release of a single 2-decade-old game was asking for a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
And it had almost no extra content in there. It included a handful of character concept sketches.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it. That Breakers collection I mentioned is...
Thorgi knew what he was doing. The way he said it was just like, and... Never mind. There's nothing there. Fucking A, dude. Okay, if you're going to do a re-release like that, you can't sell it at like a full game price. $30 isn't necessarily a AAA game price, but regardless, this is a port of a really old game. Like, come on now. actually add something cool to it to make people want to own it, own a collection of it, like what Capcom does for the fighting collections. Those are pretty neat. I don't know, man. Just poor marketing decisions, I would say.
Only $20 and contains 2 games and tons of bonus artwork and interviews. I mean, maybe $30 would have been okay if it included both the first and second games. In fact,
Maybe. Yeah.
why doesn't
that's
this
kinda what I was
include the
thinking.
first Rumblefish? Oh wait, what's that? The big deluxe version of the physical release is going to include both?
Oh.
But that's going to cost more money and it's not coming out until almost a year after the initial release? Wow, it's almost like this bare bones re-release was rushed out there just so that way they could take advantage of the retro fighting game boom going on right now with no thought of how to properly execute such a release. They also kept the weird waviness of the old arcade graphics, which
Why?
almost every other modern day emulation of the game got rid of.
Yeah.
But all this is either just superficial stuff for minor annoyances. As long as the actual game itself is still good, that's all that really matters.
That's
And
kind of
yes,
what my brain went. I feel like even at $30, if they added nothing, if it was a good port, people would still be happy, which makes me think something has to be wrong with the port.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with ports, it's always kind of a hit or miss. Usually when I hear that a game is being ported to PC, I'm like, I'll sit and wait, see what the reviews say.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a buggy mess usually at the beginning until they can fix it up later, or never do.
the Rumblefish re-release still works great. Unless you've been playing Rumblefish for the past 2 decades. Yes, the thing that bothered many longtime players the most, the thing that is the most important to point out about this re-release, is that the game was now locked to a 16:9 ratio rather than the 4:3 ratio. Why was that a problem? Because it meant that now many of your combos that required knocking the opponent into the corner didn't work.
Don't work
Players also
anymore.
found that, oddly enough, many other combos just didn't function the way they remembered them.
Oh, damn. By changing the aspect ratio, by increasing the size of the screen, I guess things just weren't built for this. And they kind of just did it without
Yeah,
any...
because it increases the field so you can't push someone into a wall the same way you would have.
For a fighting game player, you know, that's kind of important. Like these are the things, these are the
Yeah.
mechanics that we wanted, that we remember. I want to buy this port, regardless of how much money it costs, because I loved this game back then, and I can't do the same stuff that I did back then anymore. Yeah, I get that. That would really suck, honestly.
So there has been a massive outcry from the fan base to swap this back to how it should be. Problem is, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because the sad
They don't
news
care.
is, there's nothing to swap back. Yeah, most people who have spent the last decade playing this game through emulation have been playing the original release of the game. But what 3GOO ported is the 2012 version of the game. So this isn't something that they can just say, oh, our bad, we'll flip the switch to turn it back to a 4:3 ratio. No, in order to get that version of the game in here, they would have to make a completely new port of the earlier version of the game. However, I want to make one thing clear. Despite the price, despite the lack of content, I don't think this is a bad game to play. It's just not the version that Rumblefish fans wanted. But if you haven't spent the last decade learning how to do the perfect corner combo on Fightcade, then yeah, you can pick this game up and you're not going to sit there going, why doesn't this thing that I know how to do not work all of a sudden?
Oh, yeah.
You
no.
can learn this version of the game. You can have fun with this version of the game. This is still a good game to play. Although there is one additional
Never mind.
problem, and I can't sweep this one under the rug. Remember the 2 secret characters that you could find in Rumblefish 2, Greed and
Yeah.
Hazma? Well, both of them and Beatrice are unlockable in the game. In
Cool.
the original version of the game, that is.
Wait.
Because for this
Not in the
re-release,
port?
they took away the ability to unlock them and
What?
made them DLC characters.
Nope. Okay, that's pretty unforgivable.
Yeah, no. Okay.
For that price, for a port to remove
Yeah.
content and paywall it, that's just scummy.
Greed, Hazama, and Beatrice as DLC characters? Bro, you can't do this with a port. This isn't like a new game that is actively being developed. You just cut them out
No.
of the game and then made them DLC. What the
Nope.
fuck?
Yep. That's scummy.
Ah,
for
God.
$4 a pop. That's just so. Dang it, there's a word for it, but I'm drawing a blank. I remember when they announced that they were going to do a deluxe version of this game, and it would
not a $30 port, but a $42 port to get what the game was originally.
Yeah, that is... You know what? I'll just buy Guilty Gear Strive on sale, or Granblue Fantasy vs. Rising on sale, or literally any modern fighting game on sale. Get an active community with probably...
Or the Nintendo Online Arcade, where you just need the online subscription.
I mean, yeah. Like, what, $5? Yeah, sure. Insane, dude, that they thought that this would work. Yeah, this really just feels like a cash grab by the marketing team. Like, yeah, we finally got this.
That's so
just push us out without any thought behind it. No love and care for the original fans either, which is kind of like the main people who you're trying to sell this to. I don't know. This is unfortunately
that's pretty ass.
a failure. Yeah.
Include 3 DLC characters. My mind was blown. I thought, oh wow, not only are we finally getting this game, but they're going to update it with brand new characters? They're going to make the Rumblefish 2.5 a brand new version of this 2-decade-old game?
If they launched it saying there was DLC, not telling you it was the content originally, furious. Actually.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. Then we get people hyped about, like, oh my god, they're adding more to it. No, they're
making you pay for what's already in it. Oh my god.
They were instead cutting content from the game to sell it for an additional price. Well, okay. In all fairness, those 3 characters were unlockable on the Atomic Wave version of the game by putting in a password. And remember, this is the 2012 version of the game that didn't run on Atomic Wave, and I don't know for sure whether or not they could be unlocked in that version of the game, so they may not actually have cut content.
Okay. Regardless, though.
I don't think that's a good justification by any aspect of it.
Like, those characters exist within the game. Like, even if it's a port, it should come with a port. It's expected to come with a port. Like, add more to it. Give us a reason to buy it instead of it just being the old game, but less.
Especially if this is the version that hardly anyone knew existed and no one was asking for.
Exactly. You gotta add some spice to it, some appeal, not make it this.
But these characters are available as DLC, meaning they clearly did have the ability to put them into this game, and all the people that wanted the Rumblefish wanted the version of the game that had these 3 characters in there. But instead of providing us with the 3 characters that we wanted to make this feel like the complete version of the Rumblefish, they instead decided to charge an extra $12 for them on top of a price that people were already calling too high. $30 is too much for this version of the game, and $42 is way too much.
That's what I'm saying.
So yeah, people want Rumblefish 2 to finally be ported to consoles, and after all this time, we finally have it. But it's not the version people wanted, and it's too expensive, and it's full of crummy DLC and weird technical decisions, so I'm not willing to call it a full monkey's paw situation, but it's at least a monkey's knuckle. And there you have it, the history of the Rumblefish. A game that might not have revolutionized the industry or left a huge impact on the genre,
but it's
was
really
still
unique.
special. It used an animation style that, as far as I know, no other fighting game has ever attempted. And the way that Rumblefish takes a very simple base level of combat that anybody can understand, and then spices it up in a dozen different ways to create massive variety and personal expression, that's something that so many fighting games attempt, but so few are able to actually pull off. And even if the latest re-release is a disappointment, it is great that finally, after all this time, there is an official way for anyone to play the game.
It's been recognized.
But none of this is the truly important thing to take away from the Rumblefish. Because there is one thread of this game's legacy that goes far beyond just a few arcade releases and fun mechanics. As I mentioned, when given the opportunity to make games for the arcades again, Dims want it to be a fighting game. It's what they specialized in, and they won that opportunity to create the next big arcade fighting game. Unfortunately, they released this game at a time when the arcade scene and the 2D fighting game genre were both kinda dead. Yeah, 2D fighting games in the mid-2000s were practically non-existent, and the genre wouldn't come back until the end of the decade when Capcom finally revived Street Fighter with Street Fighter 4. And this game? This is a legend. This game, when it came out, brought in old and new fans alike, and the rush of enthusiasm for this release was so great it ended up reviving 2D fighters. Today we have so many different fighting games coming out. The community is growing and is larger than it's been since the mid-90s, probably even more so. And 2D fighting games are flourishing. And to think that they were practically dead for several years is stunning. And it was Street Fighter 4 that made that happen. However, Capcom didn't make that happen alone. Yeah, everyone gives Capcom all the credit for bringing 2D fighters back with Street Fighter 4, but you have to remember, in 2008, Capcom had been out of the fighting game scene for a while, as well as the arcade scene. So if they wanted to release a brand new fighter, and put it in arcades no less, they would need help. They would need to hire a co-developer to handle a good chunk of the workload.
Dims?
But who could they get to help? It wasn't just Capcom who had been out of the fighting game scene. Most Japanese developers had stopped making 2D fighters at this time. So where were they going to find a developer who during the fighting game drought of the 2000s had continued to make 2D fighters for the arcades, let alone one who was willing to work on games based around properties owned by other companies and was willing to try out brand new technology to create models we'd never seen in a 2D fighter in.
No, get out of here.
Oh, hello.
Yeah, our Arxis, I think they're fine. They were doing their own thing. Dimso.
Arxis lives in their own corner.
Yes, folks, Capcom needed someone to help them make Street Fighter 4. And that someone was none other than Dims.
That's cool.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Dims got this job solely because of the Rumblefish. No. As I said earlier, they had made other fighting games during this time.
No, I mean, like, it's the developers, it's the team behind it that they know are really good at this kind of thing. So I think it makes sense to have them on board for a revitalization of the genre.
Mm-hmm.
I get that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, the creator of Street Fighter's there. Duh.
Such as the Budokai series, which had been incredibly popular. And let's be real, Dims' founder was also the guy who co-created the first Street Fighter game. I'm sure that even if it had been over 20 years at this point, he still probably knew somebody at the company. But there's no denying that Rumblefish did play into this turn of events in one way or another. When Capcom needed someone to help them make a 2D fighter for arcades, the fact that Dims was really the only company out there who in the past few years had even attempted such a thing had to have caught their attention. And even if it didn't, even if no one at Capcom had ever even heard of the Rumblefish, and they just picked Dims' name out of a hat, Dims still needed the experience to develop this game. And the Rumblefish gave them that experience. That was a game that had to be built on brand new hardware from the ground up, using 3D models in a way that we had never seen used in a fighting game before, fighting on a 2D plane at a time when everyone was abandoning that format. And Street Fighter 4 was going to be a fighter that used 3D models on a 2D plane, running on a brand new in-house engine that Capcom had developed from the ground up. The Rumblefish had trained Dims' staff to be primed and ready to make this game. In fact, there are multiple programmers and animators from Dims who worked on Street Fighter 4 who had never worked on a 2D fighting game or a video game period before the Rumblefish.
Damn.
And that's what makes the Rumblefish so important to the history of fighting games. Dims set out to bring 2D fighters back, and they failed. But the experience that they gained from the Rumblefish pushed them ahead, even if it was just a little. And that experience, when paired with the budget and resources of Capcom, was able to make their dream come true. They were able to make the game that brought this entire genre roaring back. The story of the Rumblefish game is the story of an island where people are thrown at each other to rip each other apart until only one character survives. But that's not the story of the Rumblefish development. And that's not what fighting games are. And it's not what game development is. No, because no person is an island, and no victory is won all by yourself. Every success, every push forward, it comes from your teammates and those who have your back, and from the battles that you fought in the past. So often, the biggest champions can only stand because of those that fought before them. And that's why the Rumblefish matters. Because the success of Street Fighter 4, the game that brought 2D fighters back, the game responsible for what fighting games are today, was due to many different team members, each with experiences built up from battles fought on so many different games before it, and the Rumblefish is part of that history. And just as their experience on the Rumblefish helped to push DIMS ahead and they helped to make Street Fighter IV a success, the success of Street Fighter IV circled back around and helped to push DIMS even further. They're still around and kicking to this day, being co-developers on titles like Dragon Ball Xenoverse and The Way of Soul Calibur. DIMS began as a team of developers who had been forced to leave their respective companies after they had abandoned their fighting game departments. And they came together because they wanted to do something to celebrate that genre, to bring it back to what they love. And even if their attempt at an independent fighter didn't succeed, it was still a game that pushed them ahead. A game that gave them the knowledge and the experience that they would need to work on another game that would end up leaving an impact. A game that would allow them and the entire fighting game genre to continue to grow and flourish. All because several years before that, a group of developers who had been fired from their respective companies decided not to give up. They decided to come together and fight for survival. Thank you all very much for tuning in today for the Rumblefish retrospective. I know this is not one of the bigger franchises out there, but as I have said before, I want the fighting game retrospective to cover the entire wide genre of fighting games, not just all the big names out there. And as you can see today, sometimes those smaller titles can make a big impression later on.
Oh yeah, when we went into this, was not expecting that tie-in, to Street Fighter and just the revitalization of 2D fighters as a whole. That's crazy, actually. And well, we talked about this earlier, but that's like one of the cool things about checking out these retrospectives. The history of development. Sure, the game itself didn't pick up, but it's because of this game and the experience they got here that they went to make on a banger of a game. Not the first game that you make is going to be like perfect. There's always a process there. Seeing the process is so cool, at least to me. I enjoy the journey.
I would actually go so far to say I think I enjoy the background of the games in the retrospective more than the actual like going over the story and the characters and all that. Because like that's fun and all, but like I really like hearing the story of the development for a lot of these, and a lot of these are just crazy.
Crazy. I think too that just the way that they go about making games, their perspective on it, always trying to make something new and unique, is kind of what leads them to making those amazing things, but also like a million other things that are just obscure and really didn't work out, unfortunately. But that's the process.
It's really interesting too to see kind of the mindset of studios back in this era when I was just being born, right?
yeah, I wasn't even here.
Versus like when I was going to school to learn how to make video games and stuff. It was a very different mindset, very much so, of how we were taught to go through a lot of these things. So even when, because like I said, I really enjoy kind of the experimental technology side of this kind of genre.
Yeah.
Like with video games and technology in general. So it's like, even in school, I was messing around with new things. Like when I was in school, Shader Forge was brand new. And being able to make complex shaders was previously, it was like black magic. Only like shader coders could make cool shaders, and they were like absurd, and hardly anyone understood how they worked. So Shader Forge came in. It was like I, as an artist, could then sit down and learn how to make a shader be what I wanted it to be, and that then got integrated into actual engines like Unity and Unreal, outside of just being a plugin that it started as. So it's like it's cool seeing what was the new things that they were working on back then versus like the things when I was going to school versus the things now that things are working on. I love all that.
Yeah, that sense of innovation that you feel just like being a part of that history too. And through the games that we play too, just like what could we have in the future? Well, what innovations are they making today that could lead to something really cool in the future? I don't know. I'm excited for it.
But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you know the Rumblefish? Are you a fan of this franchise? Have you never checked it out before, but you might check it out now? Let me know all that and more in the comments down below. Also, let me know any other fighting game that you would want to see me do a retrospective on. This is going to be a big year for the fighting game retrospective here on this channel, and the next one we're doing is going to be kind of a massive one. So if you want to see that, make sure that you click that subscribe button and ring that bell. And if you want to continue,
someday we'll get to the
short ones are
this video was put on by the patrons. So if you want to join our Patreon, a link for it will be in the description down below.
So good, though.
Thank you all very much for tuning in today. Stay safe out there, and come back next time.
Man, I'm so happy that we discovered the fighting game retrospectives because it's just so
Yeah,
much
oh,
more
yeah.
than just fighting games. As you said, I
I
too
agree,
kind of
yeah.
enjoy the backstory behind the developers, not just of the fighting game itself. Because the fighting
Yeah,
is going to get crazy, but man, it's so cool to see the real world history behind it and the influences that it has till today. Was not expecting
very
the
much so.
Rumblefish of all things to have that much influence, but hey, I'm glad that I learned about it now.
It was inspired from my favorite fish.
Well, alrighty then, my dudes. That being said, though, it's 2 in the morning for me, so apologize if I misspoke or I'm just like...
It's a long video.
It's a long video, and we kind of got done recording this after the RE9 stream with scheduling and stuff. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed your times here, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Slurby and I will catch you guys in the next one. Later, dudes.
Bye-bye.